Do you ever feel like your body is bracing for something that never quite arrives? Like part of you is permanently on guard, scanning every room, every conversation, every silence for a threat that other people around you cannot seem to detect? If that sounds familiar, you are not losing your mind. Your nervous system learned something, and it is still following the lesson. Complex PTSD is not the same as the post-traumatic stress most people recognize. It does not usually come from a single catastrophic event. It comes from repeated, prolonged exposure to situations you could not escape. Emotional neglect, chronic abuse, growing up in an unpredictable environment, years inside a controlling relationship, or living through sustained harm when the people around you were supposed to keep you safe. The difference matters, because when the threat is ongoing and inescapable, your brain does not simply record a bad memory. It restructures. It reorganizes itself around survival. And long after the original situation has ended, the restructuring remains. This is not weakness. This is what a nervous system does when it has no other option. So, what does it actually feel like to live inside that restructured system every day? It can feel like exhaustion that sleep does not fix, like a hair-trigger temper that embarrasses you the moment it passes, like going completely numb when someone raises their voice, even slightly, like watching yourself from a distance during an argument, unsure whether the person responding is really you. It can feel like shame that has no clear source, a background hum of wrongness that follows you into rooms where nothing bad has happened, like an inability to trust your own perception of events, like assuming almost automatically that the good things in your life are temporary and the painful ones are permanent. These are not personality flaws. They are symptoms, and they have names. One of the most disorienting is the emotional flashback. Unlike the visual flashbacks associated with single-incident trauma, emotional flashbacks do not usually produce a vivid image of the past. They produce a feeling, sudden, overwhelming, and completely out of proportion to whatever triggered it. You might find yourself feeling the terror of a 7-year-old in the middle of an ordinary adult disagreement. You might be flooded with shame or rage or helplessness with no clear idea why. The present moment disappears, replaced by an emotional state that belongs to a different time entirely. The confusion this creates is significant, because when you cannot identify a flashback as a flashback, you tend to treat the feeling as current information. You assume you are in danger now. You assume the person in front of you is the threat. You react accordingly, and then wonder why your relationships keep following the same painful patterns. Hypervigilance is another constant companion. Your threat detection system, having been shaped by an environment where danger was real and unpredictable, does not know how to power down. It monitors tone of voice, facial expression, body language, and silence. It finds potential threat in ambiguity. It misreads neutral situations as hostile ones. And because it is running continuously, it is exhausting. A background process consuming enormous energy even when nothing's wrong. People sometimes describe this as never being able to relax. Not really. There is always a part of the mind standing watch, even in safe places, even with safe people. Then there's the question of identity. Prolonged trauma, particularly when it begins in childhood or involves the people who were supposed to shape your sense of self, often leaves a fractured sense of who you are. Research into developmental trauma suggests that a stable identity forms through consistent mirroring, being seen accurately, responded to reliably, and valued unconditionally. When those experiences are absent or actively harmful, the internal picture of who you are becomes unstable. This can produce a chameleon effect, a tendency to reshape yourself depending on who you're with, what seems safe, what seems expected. It can produce a deep uncertainty about your own preferences, values, and desires. It can make it genuinely difficult to answer the question, what do I actually want? And underneath it all, In many people living with complex PTSD, there is a persistent inner critic, a voice or a feeling that has absorbed the messages of the original harmful environment and now delivers them from the inside. You are too much. You are not enough. You caused this. You deserve this. The external threat has long since ended, but the internal continues.
This is part of why complex PTSD is so difficult to navigate alone. The very tools you would use to heal, self-compassion, self-trust, the ability to accurately read your own emotional states, are exactly the capacities the trauma damaged. But they are not gone. They are impaired, not destroyed, and that distinction is everything. Recovery from complex trauma is not a single event. It does not follow a straight line. But there are approaches that research consistently identifies as meaningful, and understanding them can change how you relate to your own symptoms. The first is learning to recognize the nervous system state you are in before you react to it. Trauma responses exist on a spectrum, from high-alert hyperarousal, where everything feels urgent and threatening, to low-energy hypoarousal, where you shut down, go numb, or dissociate. Neither state is a moral failure. Both are automatic. But developing the ability to name what is happening in your body, noticing the tightening in your chest, the flatness behind your eyes, the sudden urge to disappear, creates a small but crucial gap between the state and your response to it. That gap is where choice begins to return. The second is working with the body directly. Talk-based approaches have real value, but complex trauma is stored physiologically. Approaches that engage the body, regulated breathing, gentle movement, grounding techniques that bring attention back to physical sensation in the present moment can interrupt a nervous system that has lost its way back to baseline. The 5 senses grounding practice, where you deliberately identify things you can see, hear, touch, smell, and taste, is simple and consistently effective precisely because it pulls attention into the present rather than letting it collapse into the past. The third is titration, approaching painful material in small, manageable doses rather than attempting to process everything at once. One of the most common mistakes people make when trying to heal from complex trauma is flooding themselves with emotional material before they have built enough internal stability to contain it. Effective recovery tends to build a foundation of safety and regulation first, then gently expands the window of what can be tolerated. The fourth is addressing the inner critic directly. Not by trying to silence it, but by learning to recognize it as an internalized voice from the past rather than a current truth. Techniques drawn from parts-based frameworks where different internal states are understood as distinct voices, each with their own origin and function, can help create distance between who you are now and the messages that were installed before you had any say in the matter. The fifth is connection, carefully chosen, boundaried, and real. Complex trauma almost always damages the ability to trust, and that damage is entirely rational given what trust previously cost. But isolation reinforces the nervous system's belief that the world is unsafe. Finding even one relationship or a therapeutic context in which you experience being accurately seen without punishment begins to generate new evidence. Slowly, the system updates. None of this is fast. None of it is linear. You will have days that feel like regression and discover later they were reorganization. You will misread safe situations as dangerous long after you thought you had stopped doing that. You will need more rest than people around you seem to need, and that is not indulgence. It is the metabolic cost of carrying what you have been carrying. But here is what the evidence keeps returning to. The nervous system that learned to survive in an impossible environment is the same nervous system that can learn something new.
not because it forgets, but because it is capable of adding to what it knows. You began scanning every room because scanning once kept you safe. That is not a flaw in your design. That is the intelligence of a system that adapted under pressure. The work now is not to punish that system into submission. It is to show it, slowly and repeatedly, that the pressure has changed. You are not broken. You are a person whose nervous system is still solving a problem that no longer exists in the same form, and that problem can be updated. It does not have to run forever.